Who was a young Allie Carr? I was a pistol. I gave my parents a run for their money. I had a lot of energy and a lot of emotion. I grew up in a very traditional, per se, home for many years. Um, my sister and I then both, as we, grew and went off to college and kind of went through our young adulthood and we each got married and had our own kids, that kind of traditional look of my family, did change. My parents got a divorce after about over 30 years of marriage, which was really challenging. And I remember at first thinking like, well, I'm an adult now. Like I'm married, I have my own kids. So this shouldn't be hard for me. So I almost like made all these excuses about how it wasn't hard, and that almost to kind of justify that I didn't have to feel sad about it or didn't have to feel like it was a loss. Shortly after my husband and I got married, I competed in my first Mrs. pageant. So I competed for the title of Mrs. Minnesota. And it was one of those years where we had just gotten married and I had the time. And so I thought, why not? I am going to go for this. And so, well, I won. And the gal who had helped me and kind of mentored me in the process for the pageant, she worked for a local shopping station, a local network. And she really encouraged me. She's like, hey, we're looking for, somebody to come on and be a fashion expert, work as a stylist in one of our fashion shows. And I thought, okay, why not? So I had kind of come off of this like cloud nine of, I just won Mrs. Minnesota. I was so excited and so happy. I thought, well, why not? Because I think in my mind, I was like, well, the worst thing that can happen if they say no, nothing's changing for me. I was still Mrs. Minnesota and really excited about what was going to happen for the year. So I just thought, well, why not? And I'm so glad I just jumped in, right? And I didn't think about it. I just said, yeah, let's give it a try. And I tried it. And then about 2 weeks later, I put in my notice at my job and I left and started pursuing TV full time. So I was there for about 5 years. I worked as a kind of a product expert with their fashion and accessories. And then about a year and a half after that, transitioned into a full-time host. I'll never forget the first day I had, my cards for the show, and I was prepping and doing my research, and my husband and I were living in this tiny little Minneapolis apartment. It's like 500 square feet. So like my office was in the bedroom. And I remember looking over at him and I said, I want to do this for the rest of my life. It was like I knew that there was something about it that was so different, and it just like resonated with the way that I was wired. It was exhilarating. I loved the job. Things were going well, and I thought that, I had found my dream job. I honestly pictured myself being there for decades. I would have never, changed anything. That was where I, wanted to be. Until one day I did feel a little blindsided, when they let me know my contract wasn't going to be renewed. And so about 2 weeks after, I found out I was pregnant. So here we are. I'm now jobless. We just bought a house. We have my daughter. About to have another baby. My husband has, started his own company, and I think for a lot of it was because there was that dynamic of I still was kind of in some ways, grieving the loss of, the job. I also was grieving the loss still of my family dynamic and how that had all changed. That it was really hard. Like I did go through like a stint of some depression where, I kind of pull myself out of bed, I'd get the coffee going, I'd get breakfast for Violet, and I'd lay on the couch and she'd play on the floor, watch a cartoon, and it was hard, to get up off the couch. And I remember though, like feeling that way, like behind closed doors, but to everybody else, I wanted, them to know I'm great. I've got something in the works, I wanted to not show that it was hurtful to me. I almost wanted it to feel like I was stronger than that. Or I gave myself excuses that, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal that your parents went through a divorce. It's not that big of a deal that you lost your job. People lose their job all the time. I just like shrugged it off. And so the fact that I like ignored it made it worse, like made it absolutely worse. And I remember after my son was born, I was kind of in the thick of all of this. And I was really depressed while I was pregnant with him. And there was something about that moment when he was born that was this turning point. And we always joke, Henry, we give him a little name. He's our happy little Henry. And he brought us so much joy because I think for the first time, I really felt that I could just be me, that me as a mother to him was enough. And that kind of little microcosm of healing then really allowed me to lean into this like grief of what had changed in my family and the grief of like losing a job. But I had to sit down and like really feel that I was enough. And once I could do that in like this little way, it was like this snowball effect, right? It was this like force that couldn't be reckoned with. And it started, I started talking to my dad again. I started having, really healing conversations with my mom. My sister and I were able to open up on different levels. And then once I was able to kind of get through those things, then I felt like I was able to dream again, like really dream, like no more this kind of idea that's back here and, oh yeah, I'd love to do that one day. And so I said the dream. I said, I want to work at QVC. And I went for it. I think now I know how worth it is to take a risk. Even if, and I never want to share my story in such a way that like it's all about like the point of success, like I got the job. But because for some of us, like we're going through these things in life and it doesn't quite feel like that like moment is gonna come, that job, that house, that change, that something in our family, but I think now what I know, it really is it's about the process. And that in our lives and like in our humanity is almost where we learn so much more, right? In the valleys, not just the peaks and the mountains, but it's in those valleys that's where we become the people that we are. And I think through that journey, I really learned that like, it doesn't always have to be this perfect and polished and put together plan, but that sometimes leaning into like the raw and the mess and the hurt and the grief, that's then where like the most beautiful things can grow from that. And to me, it's not just about the like getting the job, like in my story, yeah, I happened to get the offer and it was awesome, but what if I didn't? That moment wasn't what was going to define me. I think through what I had gone through, I had learned that it wasn't these things that defined me, that I was still who I was, and that I was really proud of that. So if I could tell kind of that young Allie Carr anything, that girl, dream it. And don't let, like, I think as we age a little bit, we kind of lose that sense of dreaming, like reality and responsibility and all those things kind of set in and we put limitations. Because I was such a dreamer as a kid. I'd be like, girl, you do it. You want to be a prima ballerina? You do it. Whatever it is, like to just tell myself to not be afraid to dream. I waited too long to dream.